based on our lab scenario, we have now configured the domain controller, and now I'm going to show you how to add a node to the domain. So this is our node machine which we are going to add to the domain. So if I click on local server, it shows me the name of the computer that was generated automatically, but it doesn't show me any IP address which I need to configure. I also need to change the name to a name that we can understand. So first and foremost, let me configure it with an IP address, and let me also refer to the lab exercise, or the lab diagram that we have here with us. So according to the lab diagram that we have created, node 1 should have the IP address of 192.168.0.10. Please note, I have not configured the two NIC cards that we have for failover cluster, that is the SAN NIC card and the heartbeat NIC card, which I'm going to do later. But as of this moment, I'm focused on this one, which is adding the node 1 to the domain. So for this, I'm going to give the IP address 192.168.0.10. And we can see the DC IP address is 192.168.0.1. Now I need this information, and I'll tell you why. So I'm going to double click the NIC card properties, go for TCP IP version 4, click properties, and here I'm going to give it an IP address of 192.168.0.1. Sorry, it's going to be 10 as defined in the diagram, and my preferred DNS server will be the IP address of my domain controller, which is 192.168.0.1, because that's where the DNS server is installed. So let me just verify that with my DNS server. So I'm going to open up the DC once again, and I'm going to open up the DNS console out here. So if you remember, along with the domain controller, we had even chosen to install DNS server. So that's the reason why you see the component out here. So I'm going to open up the DNS console, and here it shows the name of my DNS server along with forward lookup zone, along with zones for my domain, that is contorso.local, and with those specially created records, that is the SRV records, which I can see out here, right? So I'm going to talk about these SRV records and what DNS records mean in a later video. For this moment, it does seem that my domain controller or my DNS server is configured properly. So I'll close this, and let's add the node to the domain. So as stated, let me just refresh this and see if my IP address is updated. Yes, it is. And now I'm going to change the computer name also. So while adding the computer to the domain, you can choose to change the name also. So I'm going to click on the change option, and this is going to be my node 1 computer. So I'm going to give it the name of node 1, and I will give the name of my domain. And here it gives me a prompt to specify the username and password that I should use to add this machine to the domain. I'm going to use the domain administrator name and password. And here it gives me a welcome message. It says welcome to contorso.local domain, and I will say OK to this. And then it says you must restart your computer to apply these settings. I will click on OK, click on close, and it will ask me to restart my computer. So I will click on restart now. And while this is restarting, let us check what's happened on the domain controller. I'm sure there are going to be some changes on the domain controller. So I'm going to click on Tools here and go into Active Directory Users and Computers. And here is my domain once again, and I will click on Computers. And as you can see, since we have added node 1 to the domain, it has created a computer account for node 1 in the computers folder. At a later stage, we're going to keep all computer accounts in a different OU, but as of this moment, we'll leave it as it is, and we have successfully added our machine, our client to the domain, our node 1 to the domain. And let's verify this information by logging in. And when I try to log in, and let me just scroll down this window, and I get an option which I wouldn't get earlier, other users. So I will click on other users, and let me now log in to the domain by giving the domain name and the domain administrator account and the password, and let me see if I'm able to successfully sign in to the domain. So this completes our lab exercise on adding a client machine to the domain.